For this episode of Sushasan, we have with us an IAS officer who's a trusted aide of the UP Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath. He's worked with him very closely over the last 5 to 6 years, and post his retirement, now he's advisor to the Chief Minister. I'm talking about Mr. Awanish Awasthi, and in this episode of Sushasan, he talks about turning around the law and order situation in UP, about getting investments from across the world to the state, about building expressways at a very fast pace, about the upcoming Ram Mandir in Ayodhya, about Kumbh, and many other things. He ends it with a message for the youth. Do listen in. Mr. Awanish Awasthi, a very, very warm welcome to Sushasan. You are currently the advisor to the Chief Minister of UP, Yogi Adityanath. And if you look at his tenure over the last 6 years as a Chief Minister, there have been a handful of officers who are considered to be extremely close to him, his confidants. You are one of them. Some would argue you've been closest to him and almost his right-hand man. And which is also corroborated by the fact that a lot of key important agendas of the state government and some sensitive matters have also things that you've been at the helm of affairs of. So there's so much to unpack, there's so much to talk about. इतनी सारी चीज़ें पिछले 5-6 साल के आपके अनुभव से ही बात करने को है कि उसमें ही घंटों लग जाएंगे. बट उसके अलावा भी मैं और चीज़ों की बातें करना चाहता हूँ. बट इससे पहले कि मैं स्टार्ट करूँ, अगर आप अपना पिछले 5-6 साल का अनुभव एक्सपीरियंस देखें, मतलब एक बैलेंस पे अगर एक तरफ हम वो रखें और उससे पहले के 30-35 साल का जो अनुभव एज एन IAS ऑफिसर रखें, तो सेटिस्फैक्शन के तराजू पे जो है कौन सा पन्ना भारी बैठता है?
Thank you, Gaurav, and thank you, Samagra, for calling me here today. I am here today basically to, of course, tell you about things that have happened in Uttar Pradesh under the command of our Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath ji. I would also like to give you a broad perspective of what Uttar Pradesh is. And having worked in Uttar Pradesh as an IAS officer for the last 35 years, it definitely, we have a lot of insights into our state, having seen it since 1987. I am an engineer myself, I am a technical person, so that again gives me a perspective of, as an officer, of how to deal with issues and projects in the state with a technical background of my own. If I were to divide my professional career, I would divide it probably into 4 or 5 blocks, or if I say Hindi में खंड हम कहेंगे कि उसको हम उस तरह से divide कर सकते हैं. पहला, the first phase would be when I started my probation in then Allahabad up Prayagraj. And Kumbh of 1989, I could see the Kumbh of 1989 as SDM Sadar, SDM Child of Allahabad. And then I went to a district called Mainpuri. And then I went to a district called Almora at Ranikhet. And then professionally, I started my basic career in the state government in the finance department. And I also was able to work in the field in a district called Jaunpur. So those are the early years of life in any IAS officer who starts his career. So I would say that that is the nascent phase that was there. Then the phase which is most important to us and which we love to do is a phase where we are collectors in the districts. Now, if you are a collector in the district at a young age, you definitely can do and still do, and I've continued to say this, that even in the future, whatever be the challenges, as a collector, you have the world with you. I mean, it's a clean slate where you can write whatever you want on the blackboard. So I was collector in Lalitpur. I went to the district well in advance. Lalitpur is a beautiful district in Bundelkhand. Then I went to one of the most difficult districts in the state, Azamgarh. I was collector there. Then I went to a district called Badaयूं. It's one of the what was one of the largest districts of the state. And then, of course, I went to Faizabad, now Ayodhya. And that is where way back in 97, I could see very closely post the demolition of the masjid, what was happening on the ground and the issues of the Ram temple. And then I got transferred to Varanasi. That again was a very sensitive as well as very interesting phase of my life, where I could be the collector in Varanasi and we could see a large number of things. And then I did a 3-year stint as the longest standing collector in Meerut, which of course Western UP, it's the heart of Western UP, and that again was a challenge for us. And finally, before I closed my career as a collector, I went to Gorakhpur, where the then MP was our Honorable Chief Minister, and we could very closely work in the district of Gorakhpur for a year and a half, and I could contribute to that district and its project and very closely understand the working of our Chief Minister, who was then the MP of Gorakhpur. So that is the second phase. The third phase is when I did about 6-7 years in the power sector. I am an electrical engineer by profession, and I'm a good engineer. When I stood for the engineering service, I was All India 1. And I was so very happy that I was handpicked to lead the first distribution company of Western UP called Pashchimanchal. I was the first MD of that company as an IAS officer. And my appointment was challenged by certain people that, well, you can't have bureaucrats doing technical work. And it was the first time my BTech degree in electrical engineering from IIT Kanpur came out of the wraps, and it was submitted to the Honorable Supreme Court that he is an electrical engineer and he's a very good engineer. And that is the way I moved forward, and we could establish the first DISCOM in Western UP, the Pashchimanchal, and that was where I started learning how to get things on the ground. After working in the Pashchimanchal Vidyut Vitran Nigam, then I moved to the headquarters in the power sector. I became the MD of the GEDCO. I was also MD of the UPPCL, which is the nodal agency, and I was also MD of the transmission company. So I was doing 3 jobs at the same time, and it was then that we had the foundations laid for all the big power projects of the state. And I'm so very happy that all big power projects, we were able to contribute our inputs on that. The determination of sites, the availability of coal and the feedstock, the connectivity to the various railway sidings, the infrastructure which has to be provided to provide the backup for evacuation of power, the land acquisition, all of these things I could learn big power projects, how to handle them. Big projects was when this third phase of my career with the power sector was there. And that happened for a very long time. And then after that...
More than 10 years, I imagine, right?
Yes.
Everything that you had.
It's almost about 7 to 8 years. And then, of course, I joined the tourism department way back in 2009. I also had the culture department. I also worked in the higher education department. And then finally in 2012, I was able to go to the Government of India. And as luck would have it, I could join the Government of India as the only joint secretary in the Department of Disability. It was a new department. We had a very active secretary in the department who herself was so very proactive about the department. So all the schemes, all the programs, the new projects, as well as the Act of Disability. You all know that the Honorable Prime Minister is very pro-disabled persons. It was then that we initiated this entire area into the legal aspects, the project aspects, and of course in the area of providing benefits to all the persons with disabilities in the country. It was the Act of the Persons with Disabilities was passed in the Parliament. It was a major milestone for us. I was part of the team that could do it. Our then Cabinet Minister, Mr. Thawarchand Gehlot ji, was so very kind. Our secretary herself, she had full knowledge about the sector, and it was because of the Honorable Prime Minister's very proactive approach. He gave the name Divyang to persons with disabilities that we were able to do a lot of work in this area. Disability sector work happened for about 4.5 years. And this was my, I would say, the fourth phase in my life. And in the Government of India, we had so much of flexibility in doing work under the new government. We really enjoyed working there. Then after that, in 2017, the Honorable Chief Minister Yogi Ji came to UP as the Chief Minister, and then he wanted us to be part of his team. And then from 17 till 2022, when I retired, this was my fifth phase, and that was when we worked in the sectors of information, and we worked in the sectors of tourism, we worked in the sector of expressways, we worked in the sector of religious affairs in the sense of the Kashi Vishnath. We also worked in the sector of Home Department, where I served for almost 3 years. And I finally, before my retirement, also worked back in the power sector, for which I had worked earlier also. And that was my fifth phase of my professional career. And I'm so very happy that these 5 phases all have been very exciting. As a collector, I could see the entire state. I was in Bundelkhand. I was in the heart of Eastern UP. Incidentally, I did all the 4 big districts of Eastern UP as collector: Azamgarh, Faizabad, then Faizabad, Varanasi and Gorakhpur, and Meerut, which is Western UP's lead district. I could do it for a very long time. So very exciting, very positive, and I keep advising my junior officers, my junior colleagues, that one should take things as they are and do your best. Incidentally, I had a large number of probationers, and I really love to have probationers, and some of our probationers are now very senior officers in Government of India and state government. We still have a very family sort of approach with all of them. So I would feel that, this service is an excellent service. It gives an opportunity with par excellence to work for people at large. Ultimately, the call for me or call for any of us as an officer is whether you have been able to achieve on the ground what your democracy asks you to do.
Yeah. Well, that's a long and a rich kind of experience. You said 5 phases: initial probation, and then initial postings, then DMship, then working in the state government, primarily power and a few other sectors, then Government of India and disability, and then back working with the current kind of Chief Minister. We'll deep dive into a lot of these things. मैं काफ़ी सारी बातें करने को है, but आपसे फिर भी वो एक बार सवाल पूछूंगा. Phase 5 and phase 1, 2, 3, 4 together, which becomes more satisfaction from an impact perspective, saying the objective of being in the service is to be able to make a difference in the lives of people. So उस मापदंड पे, उस पैरामीटर पे, how would you kind of...
आपने एक सीढ़ी देखी होगी. सीढ़ी का पहला जो है स्टेप होता है जब phase 1 होता है. सीढ़ी का दूसरा स्टेप होता है phase 2 होता है. सीढ़ी का तीसरा स्टेप होता है phase 3 होता है. सीढ़ी का चौथा स्टेप होता है phase 4 जब आप गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया में काम करते हो. सीढ़ी का 5वां स्टेप है जब आप फाइनल ईयर्स ऑफ द करियर में यू आर एबल टू, एज हेड ऑफ द डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ दोज डिपार्टमेंट्स दैट यू हैंडल, यू आर एबल टू गिव. अब गौरव जी आप ही बताइए, अगर सीढ़ी का पहला स्टेप हटा देंगे नहीं तो सीढ़ी का 5वां स्टेप कहाँ आएगा?
Not possible without the first 4 phases.
Exactly. So it's a build up.
Yeah.
And since I could work as a collector under every dispensation that was there in the state government, I keep saying this to younger officers who at times come back to us saying that, sir, कैसे करें, क्या करें? मैंने कहा, all you need to do is just do your best. And if you are a performer, if you are a person who can deliver, you will always be picked up for performing and delivering. And I can assure you, any government always likes deliverers and performers to work with it as a team.
Yeah.
The only issue is that you should only focus on performing and delivering and not focus on anything else. And this is what I keep telling my younger officers. So जैसा मैंने कहा, आप अगर नीचे की सीढ़ी निकाल देंगे, ऊपर सीढ़ी बचेगी नहीं. So ये जो build-up है, ये build-up one by one होता है. When you actually are in the final years of your service, it is that combined influence of the last 4 phases that helps you to perform and deliver.
एक एक करके टॉपिक्स की बात करते हैं. सबसे पहला that I want to talk about is law and order.
Yeah.
Because That's one thing that has seen a very drastic improvement and change over the last few years with the current kind of dispensation. एंड हम समग्र में दो चीज़ों की बात करते हैं, डेटा की बात करते हैं, तो आंकड़े और डेटा भी ये कहते हैं कि क्राइम रेट्स हैव कम डाउन, ऑल हीनियस क्राइम ड्रास्टिकली कम डाउन. एंड दूसरी हम बात करते हैं पैल्पेबल चेंज ऑन द ग्राउंड, कि आप गाड़ी लेके निकल जाइए और आप बात करिए लोगों से एंड यू काइंड ऑफ इंटरेक्ट विद देम एंड देन व्हाट इज द पल्स दैट यू आर पिकिंग अप. Both fronts पे there's a very significant change in the situation in law and order.
Yes.
Now, this does not happen on its own. A lot has to go behind to kind of make this happen. You've been the head of the Home Department. Police जो है state की वो Home Department के under आती है. The Chief Minister himself is the Home Minister of the state also. So what has been the strategy? मतलब अगर एक strategy angle से देखेंगे, what were the 4-5 key corner points or cornerstones of improving law and order in UP? But if you can explain the strategy, that will be very helpful.
I can only try to explain to you what has been the strategy of the Honorable Chief Minister.
Yes.
Because we have worked with him right from day one almost when he became the Chief Minister. Well, there are three aspects that I'd like to tell you. Is that as a public representative, he has one of the largest, longest standing on the ground as an MP. And he is one person who till date, listens to people in a Janta Darshan when he goes to Gorakhpur or at times in Lucknow with the application in hand. So this ground level feedback that he continues to manage despite being the Chief Minister, this proximity to the ground, to the absolute grassroots, is what gives him the strength to understand what is happening on the ground. So this is the first thing that I could see for our Honorable Chief Minister, that he knew exactly what was happening.
Ear to the ground.
At times, as the Home Secretary, he would know better on what of an incident on the ground than most of us. Because by the time we would understand what is happening, he would have already got the feedback from various sources. So his mechanism of the Janta Darshan, feedback from the ground, is rare. I haven't seen anyone who would give so much time every morning in Gorakhpur or in Lucknow, where he would listen to almost about 1,000 people plus women, old women, young parents, things like these. So this is one. The second aspect, he has the vision from the top. So very clearly he decided that when he works in the government, and the government should work such that there should be zero tolerance to crime and criminality. It is then that he initiated this process of going after the major criminal mafia nexus persons. And this is when everyone got identified. All the laws were properly put in place. The powers which are there already with the collectors and the police officers for the state, they were brought in place. And then this entire drive against the mafia, drive against whatever illegal properties they had acquired. So this aspect became very sharp in focus for him. And he used to monitor it not just on a daily basis, but on an hourly and at times minute-to-minute basis whenever there were any incidents which were of a drastic nature. So the first aspect is his proximity to the ground. The second aspect is the overall view of zero tolerance. And the third aspect that he undertook was to increase the infrastructure of the police force. You know that UP police is the largest police force in the world. And the very first thing he did was to increase the manpower level for the police force. The police force in 2017 was about 3 lakh, approximately 3 lakh personnel. He has now brought it to more than 4,60,000, which means more than about 1,60,000 new personnel have been recruited in a very fair fashion, absolutely transparent, right up to the police officers in the PPS, right up to the police officers in the same, in the term of sub-inspectors, and then the constables. And in that, again, he has increased the number of women, which has become now threefold. So women constables have also put in the system. So one, for the infrastructure is increased the number of personnel. So the police force of Uttar Pradesh has become 50% more in terms of manpower. Second, he decided that we should have an infrastructure in every thana. So for every thana, there were barracks which are under construction now. He increased the infrastructure capital budget for the Home Department by 10 times. And we had never had any dearth of money for the infrastructure for the police. And this also happened. So every thana would now have enough barracks for all the police force, women as well as men, to function and operate. He also said that, well, we have to have housing for our police personnel and their families. So we now have, for the very first time, multi-storied buildings coming up in the police lines and other areas for providing the housing for the families of policemen. So this was the third aspect, increasing manpower and providing infrastructure for the new thanas were approved. The fire safety system was totally upgraded. The upgradation of this of the specific forces which are there for PAC, for the STF, for the ATS, for all of them. Then a new force was created, a special security force just on the lines of CISF was also formulated with 5 battalions in Uttar Pradesh. So the entire infrastructure saw sea change in the state. And the fourth aspect that he ensured was that we used technology to increase the effectiveness of the police force. You know that now crime control is possible through forensics. So new forensic institute, which was the new institution, the foundation stone was laid by the Honorable Home Minister himself. That has started almost functioning. By July, it will start functioning academically also. So forensic institute at Lucknow, forensic labs at the regional headquarters, new thanas for the cyber crimes, new equipment for monitoring cyber crime, new equipment for UP 112, new equipment in every thana for CCTVs. So this fourth aspect of using technology for improving the effectiveness of the UP police force, that was there. And finally, ensuring the morale of the police force. And he ensured that a transparent system of transfers and postings was provided to all the policemen in the state. So this improvement of morale, giving medals and giving basically awarding those who have done good work. So this is the aspect again which has brought a lot of result. And there's one more point where we work very hard, where the Honorable Chief Minister was very clear. Once you have the police force, once you lodge an FIR, once you have filed a charge sheet, then you have to ensure that in the court of law, you have a proper prosecution wing. So he upgraded the prosecution systems. We are the best prosecution wing in the country in terms of using technology, Government of India softwares. And now, in the prosecution side, we have been able to fix responsibility in the sense that convictions have happened for those mafias who for the last 25, 30 years, despite having more than 100 cases, not a single case was, they were convicted in a single case. So these convictions have happened so that these mafias could not then dabble into politics, because once you are convicted, you become ineligible. So this is another aspect. And finally, the last aspect was Mahila Shakhtikaran, women's safety. So in women's safety, again, he massively went into schemes and programs and projects for ensuring women's safety, safe city projects, pink booths, Mahila beat constable at the village level, Mahila help desk in every thana. So this seven, I would say the seven.
There's also a new organization, right, which is Mahila and Bal Suraksha Sangathan.
Yes.
What's the purpose there?
So the purpose was that you bring the entire Mahila and Bal Suraksha, women and child protection, under one umbrella, and a lady officer was put under this, under whose command this entire thing was put up, so that there was focus on women and children could be there. I can tell you, any number of criminals who were booked under the women-related acts and POXO, they have now been given Phansi ki saja. They have been given capital punishment. And this has happened in a massive way in this state. And this is what has caused all these figures of crime and criminality to come down. We are one of the lowest in terms of murder, in terms of per capita population. We are one of the lowest in terms of dacoity. We have almost removed kidnapping and murder, some of these very heinous crimes. We have very little, the crimes against women have come down drastically. So almost on every front, crime has come down. And by the way, almost 8 to 10,000 crores of property which was illegally made by some of these criminals under the Gangster Act. They have been jabt crore and taken under their command. Incidentally, one aspect which I would like to state here is that the way the UP government, the UP police, the Home Department has moved forward, a lot of help and lot of, I would say, guidance has also come from the judiciary. So this positive role that we have played, we have also got a support from the judiciary where they have also supported all such very strong initiatives to improve the law and order of the state.
There are a lot of things. You're saying starting from the ear to the ground of the Chief Minister, then the zero tolerance policy, then you're saying a lot of investment going after mafias, the top mafias who have been kind of infamous, this thing, so really going after them. Then infrastructure, both in terms of manpower, making it more than 1.5 times, and physical infrastructure, both in the thanas as well as residential and all of that. So
10 times.
Then technology, you're saying technology is a big focus, forensics being an important thing there, and other than that, technology, then women's safety being a agenda. So all of this kind
and prosecution.
Prosecution is something specifically I wanted to focus on. Because a lot of time what happens is police has to make a case, and the case ultimately will get decided in the court. Now the challenge becomes evidence and all of that. So I'm assuming forensics, for example, really helps, because forensic can really make a case open and shut almost, because you have very DNA sample or other kind of evidence which can really empower the case that the police
close the case
basically. And you're saying judiciary also has been supportive of this. So tell a little bit about prosecution. How did that improve? What was specific? Because forensics will also take time. I think the institution.
Well, prosecution, you all know that the prosecution constitutes the entire prosecution wing of the state, and this has the entire prosecution officers. There's an entire wing of prosecution officers where there are director prosecution, joint director prosecutions. Then there are senior prosecuting officers and the prosecuting officers. We did massive intake of prosecuting officers because there are a lot of shortage. They were selected through the State Public Service Commission. Large number of courts which didn't have prosecuting officers obviously suffered, because if you don't have a prosecuting officer, you can't move forward. They were then taken on board. Then the DGC criminals were brought on board. The DG civil were brought on board. The DGC criminals, the collectors were asked to sit with the district judges in what is called the monitoring committee. Every month we approached the Honorable High Court. The Chief Justice of the Honorable High Court issued instructions to these district judges that they should hold monthly meeting with the DM and the SP, or where there are commissionerates of police with the commissioners of police. So that again happened. So this close working of the judicial system, of the district magistrate's office and the prosecutors and the local police, this all brought together things in focus and ensured that conviction rates are one of the highest, or rather the highest in the country in terms of women cases as well as POXO cases. There is one aspect which I would like to state further, is that in the courts, the women and POXO new 118 courts, fast-track courts were established as per the instructions of the Government of India. And those courts, once they became operational, the result was obvious, and the result is such that almost 50% of the convictions which are happening in the country come from UP. Incidentally, in a simple Lok Adalat, the National Lok Adalat, 50% of the entire cases disposed in the country are from UP. And we have been applauded by the National Lok Adalat for the work we have done in the Lok Adalat.
This coordination between judiciary and the executive that you're talking about, this is not common. The general perception is judiciary is separate. It's a separate, it has to be independent, and the executive is different. But here you were saying the judiciary extended the kind of really came together to make sure prosecution gets better, it increases and so on, right? Which is not generally what you imagine would happen.
If you are a basic student of democracy, then you will understand that the pillars of democracy, if all pillars of the democracy function together, it is then that आप जनता की सरकार है ना? So अगर executive मजबूत हो, legislative aspect मजबूत हो, judiciary मजबूत हो, and the fourth pillar अगर press आपकी मजबूत हो, they can point out shortcomings, but on the reverse, if good work is being done, appreciate the government and the people who have done good work. Then there is no reason why democracy can't function positively. In fact, इसमें एक aspect मैं आपको बताना चाहूँगा कि जितने भी district judges हैं, उनसे जब हम लोगों के district magistrates and police officers ने बात की, कहीं भी हम लोग को ऐसा नहीं लगा कि डिस्ट्रिक्ट जज स्वयं जो है कहीं भी किसी भी रूप में वो सपोर्ट नहीं करेंगे. ठीक है, कुछ डिस्ट्रिक्ट जज ज़्यादा सपोर्ट करेंगे, इट डिपेंड्स ऑन देयर पर्सनल स्टाइल्स, बट आई कैन टेल यू देयर वर सर्टेन कोर्ट्स वेयर विद इन 15 working days in a POXCO case where a minor girl was raped and murdered, the judge gave capital punishment in 15 working days. Now that is something which has to come forth, and most of the courts, at times we fall short because we are not able to get our officers in place, our investigations are not as up to the mark, or they are not what as per law it is required to take up. So it is we who have to put the front foot. And I always feel, as an officer of the state, having very closely worked with the judiciary, that the judiciary supports if you are positive, if you are doing your job, and if you are doing it well to your best extent, we always would get support from the judiciary. And I have met any number of senior judicial officers and the judges, and they have always been kind to us and understood our shortcomings, and at times supported us in such endeavors where we wanted to ensure that the rule of law should be there. In fact, I feel that this is the example for Uttar Pradesh, is the best example where the Honorable Chief Minister, his resolve of zero tolerance to crime, the UP Police's resolve of working positively, the Home Department's resolve of taking it forward, and the judiciary of the state ensuring that things will happen if evidence is there. It goes on to prove that perception on the ground is कि well, हाँ, अब कानून व्यवस्था की स्थिति बहुत पॉजिटिव.
एक और चीज़ मैं आपने बोली उसमें डबल क्लिक करना चाहूँगा, वो है माफियाज के अगेंस्ट एक्शंस. बिगेस्ट माफिया who are known to be kind of, UP has been notorious for mafias. Some of them become MLAs in the past, MPs in the past, but there was a very targeted action, as you said, as one of the strategy points to really get after them. And then there's the Gangster Act. There are many other kind of legal provisions, and I think there's some changes were also made to that, so that they are brought to book, and that sends a signal to the rest of them that this will not be tolerated. So exactly क्या हुआ? Share with some numbers, some examples.
देखिए, I mean, world over, अगर आप एनालाइज करें, चूंकि अब हम लोग उस विभाग में काम कर चुके हैं, the challenge world over across all countries is to bring crime and criminality to justice. It's always a challenge. They have the money power, they have the strength, they have the mechanisms to threaten people, they have a mechanism to threaten witnesses, they have a mechanism to do all sorts of things which one would never encourage in a democracy. मेरा तो केवल अनुभव यह है कि अगर रिजॉल्व है, हमको लाना है सुधार, तो जो रिजॉल्व प्रदेश में, हमारे प्रदेश में देखा गया है, तो सुधार तो आएगा ही. एंड एक बार सुधार का रिजॉल्व हो जाता है और रिजल्ट आने लगते हैं, देन द आम पब्लिक, पीपल एट लार्ज से कि हाँ ये बड़ा अच्छा हुआ. क्योंकि जब एक बड़े माफिया को उसकी बिल्डिंग टूटते हुए दिखती है तब आदमी कहता है कि हाँ ये सरकार ने काम अच्छा किया है, और तब वो उसको अप्रिशिएट।
Share a little bit about that. जो ये बिल्डिंग तोड़ना, उनके resources, because financially you have to make them. It's one is the booking, bringing them to book. Second is also their financial. This thing has to be confiscated and stuff.
So I will tell you. I mean, the Gangster Act in Uttar Pradesh has been there for almost about 40 years, and the Gangster Act did not have gangster rules. And when we started action against the gangsters, the Chief Minister used to. I mean, by the way, our Chief Minister reviews the law and order situation of the state every day at evening. So this everyday approach, every hour approach for if there is an incident is what ultimately brings the result. So he said कि नहीं ये take up करना है, and we were taking up the Gangster Act. Then the court said that, well, if you have the Gangster Act, you have to be fair. You can't impose the Gangster Act without rules. So the very first time when we took it up to the Chief Minister, he said, work hard upon it, make the gangster rules. So when the court said that, well, you don't have rules for your own officers, so that there is no discretion and you have a SOP. So we made the rules, and the Chief Minister approved it from the Home Department. We implemented it. So the jail manual had not been upgraded in Uttar Pradesh since independence. And then he said, no, you have to improve the working of the jails. And it is then that under his command, the Government of India gave us a model jail rules. We entirely changed the jail rules so that the jails, which are also one of the components of where you can control crime and criminality, because most of these criminals go to jail and then they continue to operate. So there we did a lot of improvement under the command of the Chief Minister. So again, if the law has to be brought in place, if the rules have to be brought in place, if under the new act that we have, Damage to Public Property Act, the Honorable Supreme Court way back in 2008 and 9 had said that if a person damages public property, the state should endeavor to recover that money from the person who has caused damage to public property. Nobody has the right under any circumstance, whatever their grievance, to damage public property. Nobody has the right to break the window pane of a state transport bus. Nobody has the right to set fire to a state transport bus. Under the Chief Minister, he said, bring an act for this. I put it up to him and he said that bring an act for this. And very soon that act was brought in place. And we also put a system in place. Of course, it was tough, that if you have caused damage to public property, your photograph will be shown in public places. Now that is how law and order gets improved. And that is how this entire process of Uttar Pradesh has gone forward.
It's why just the last point that you talked about is different opinions also come. One is a clear opinion that you cannot under any circumstance. In a democracy you can protest, but you shouldn't damage public property because that's made by taxpayers' money, that's public good. And if that happens, then you should kind of be held to account for that. There's another school of thought which says, yes, conceptually yes, but sometimes it can be too harsh because a mob has kind of come together, did something, and then kind of really, if something happens to their property or this thing, it's a little harsh, is another school of thought. And especially it becomes tricky if it is done selectively. Right? ये एक बार बात आती है. What's your
I'll give you an answer to this. What justifies damage to any public property, or even for that matter any private property? Show me anything which can justify this.
Yeah, that can be justified.
आज की तारीख में मेरी गाड़ी कहीं बाहर पब्लिक प्लेस पे खड़ी है, कोई उसका अगर टायर में हवा निकाल दे तो मुझे तो दुख होगा ही ना. आपके घर पर कोई शीशा में फोड़ दे तो आप तो हल्ला मचाएंगे ही ना. तो nobody can justify damage to property under any pretext. There are legal ways of going to taking up public issues. You can go to court of law and file a PIL in case you are so touchy about a certain issue and you feel that you have been wronged. But you can't go on the road, block the road, cause public nuisance, and then of course become violent and break property. So this is zero tolerance. Supreme Court has very clearly said zero tolerance. The rule of law does not allow you to damage anything. The good part is that, and that is what I am telling from experience, Now in a crowd, if you cause damage to something, there are too many mobile phones around. So too many people taking photographs, too many people taking videos. So the evidence comes automatically. Who has caused damage? What was initiated from from amongst the crowd? So it's very easy to find actual proof of who has caused this problem. So damage to public property is a zero tolerance game. Incidentally, after this new act has come in Uttar Pradesh, except for one incident where one would say that there was some damage to property, public property, but other than that, I haven't seen for the last so many years now any damage happening to public property, which usually was the thing.
There's a strong deterrent now.
कोई आदमी की एक्सीडेंट में डेथ हो गई, पता चला 2 बस में शीशे तोड़ दिए. तो ये चीज़ अब बिल्कुल बहुत ही लिमिटेड हो गई है, बहुत रेयर हो गई है. And people now understand that, well, if you are going to damage property, you will be liable to fix up that damage.
हम एक ये सेंसिटिव चीज़ों की बात कर रहे हैं. एक और टॉपिक, लास्ट टॉपिक, विच इज़ अराउंड एनकाउंटर्स. देयर ऑल्सो बीन सम चेंज आई थिंक इन दैट पॉलिसी देयर. उसमें भी अगर ये व्यू आता है, एक है people always support, people want mafias to be kind of done justice. So the public opinion is in support of any such encounter that happens. There's a school of thought which says long term that's not probably the best way to do that. It's better to be patient, to take them to court, to put them to justice. What's the thinking here, and what's been the change in the procedure or
I would not like to comment too much on this because obviously, as you said, it's a sensitive topic. But the government of the Supreme Court has very clearly enunciated guidelines for any such incident that happens. And we in the state government are very well aware of what exactly are the guidelines. And wherever such an incident happens, those guidelines are followed. And very clearly, such incidents are taken up as per the law. It is very obvious that in a state of our size, with so many issues that are there, and the entire abhiyan that we take up, we have to be as per the law. And I'm sure all our police officers should understand that they should, whatever be the case, act as per law.
Yeah. ठीक है. So you've talked about law and order. अब एक different subject पे move करते हैं, which is infrastructure. You've been CEO of UP which is Uttar Pradesh Expressways and Industrial Development Authority, right? And there's such an increase in pace of expressway and highway construction. That's true across the country, but UP has kind of taken the lead there. There's so many expressways coming out. There's the Purvanchal Expressway, then there's the Bundelkhand Expressway, there's the ambitious Ganga Expressway, all from Meerut, I think, right down to Prayagraj, that is kind of being envisaged. There's a Gorakhpur Link Expressway. There's around 10-12 expressways that are under construction or recently been completed in the state. The question is, what has been the unlock? मतलब ये जो पेस बढ़ा है एक्सप्रेसवे और हाईवे कंस्ट्रक्शन का, व्हाट्स बीन द मेन अनलॉक? इज इट बजट्स? इज इट द वे प्रोक्योरमेंट इज डन? इज इट लैंड एक्विजिशन? व्हाट्स बीन द मेजर अनलॉक दैट वी हैव सीन सच अ फास्ट स्प्री हियर?
Well, since I worked very closely in the department of UP Expressways, which is under the industry department, what I would like to say is that, again, it should be a clarity of thought. Making of any infrastructure requires 4 or 5 aspects to be taken up. One is the acquisition of land for the project. 2, a clear-cut DPR and a clear-cut mechanism of having an executing agency. 3, providing all the raw material for it. When you're making roads, a lot of earthwork is required, which again is a challenge. A lot of grit is required, gitti, which again is a challenge. A lot of other material and infrastructure, so the provision of material is required. 4th is that all these permissions and all the clearances, all the NOCs for the green clearance, all of that has to come on time. And finally, you have the manpower to work on the ground and things are properly monitored. What I would say is that, having closely worked in this sector, the Chief Minister was very clear that we should have infrastructure as per international standards. And it was then that he said that, well, let us build a road for Purvanchal so that we can bring Purvanchal as an integral part of Uttar Pradesh. So we got the Purvanchal Expressway. Despite COVID, despite the challenges of COVID, despite the challenges of infection during COVID, when the labor force was to be very clearly secured from infection and things like that, despite the challenge of earthwork being a difficulty in eastern UP, despite all of that, all of land got acquired. The entire COVID campaign, we were very kind to the construction companies there and supported them rather than stopping their work. So in 30 months, the Purvanchal Expressway has come about. I have been a collector of Azamgarh. From Azamgarh to Lucknow, now it takes hardly 2.5 hours, while earlier it used to take more than 5 hours. So this bringing of the districts of Purvanchal, Balia, Gazipur, Varanasi, Sultanpur, Mau, Azamgarh, Amethi, Barabanki, all of these districts on board from the Purvanchal area. And now with the Gorakhpur Link Expressway, you can have a direct link from Gorakhpur via the Purvanchal Expressway to Lucknow, an alternate route. So that will open the northern part of eastern UP to the expressways. And there is now a bridge across the Ganga which has been made by NHAI. So direct link from Patna to Purvanchal to Agra, Lucknow, and through the expressways, the Yamuna Expressway. We now have a total link to Delhi through expressways. So this is what was the first challenge for us, and the Chief Minister ensured that we had the complete flexibility to execute the project, and funds were always available to us from the state government. It was then that he decided that, well, when he went to Jhansi for the first time, declared the Bundelkhand Expressway. And that got made in record time of about 26 to 28 months. There are always challenges, but well, it all got done. This was again despite COVID. And incidentally, since the acquisition of land was such that it was totally without any litigation, he felicitated the farmers who had provided the land, and we ensured that the compensation for land went to the farmers straight to their account so that there was no middleman in between. And then it was when the Kumbh was happening, he thought about making the Ganga Expressway. This expressway was tried earlier, but it couldn't succeed. It was he who then envisioned that, well, we should have a road right till the spot where the Meerut Expressway comes from Delhi to Meerut, and then from Meerut we take it to Prayagraj. And the Ganga Expressway, which is the largest project of the state, was brought about, and the construction of this expressway is also in full swing to try to ensure that we have it by 2025.
And out of the 4-5 things that you talked about, what was the biggest unlock again? Is it land acquisition? 5-6 things that you said are required to kind of really make a...
It is...
what was the... Where did you have to put the maximum effort or...
The maximum effort obviously is one, land acquisition, no doubt. One has to be very fair in land acquisition. One has to be very firm also in land acquisition. One has to be very firm with the revenue authorities so that they declare the notifications in time and ensure then that the acquisition money goes to the farmer's account. You will be surprised to know that during the land acquisition for the expressways in Uttar Pradesh, more than 95 to 96% of the compensation was done with the farmer's consent, which means the farmer came to us. We said, we are going to offer you 4 times and this is the rate. He said, fine. We gave him a calculation. He agreed to the calculation. He signed an agreement with the state government, with the local district magistrate, and money was transferred to his account. And the land got acquired. It became in the name of the expressway. So this model of land acquisition, where nowhere in the country would you find that such fast, very express mechanism of land acquisition happened. And every time land acquisition happened, these farmers got felicitated at the Chief Minister's level. And we had large functions at the state level where representatives of farmers groups were brought to felicitate them because they are now partners for us. And they got 4 times the amount.
Good compensation, transparent process, direct transfer of money and
and use of technology also. A lot of software was used to ensure that when we have the alignment of the road, then we know where exactly it falls on the revenue maps. So that the calculation of the compensation becomes very easy.
Yeah, otherwise that itself is...
So this is one. So that was one. Second, very transparent mechanism of bidding. We ensured that the bidding was always less than the price as determined by the PWD department. All our estimates were vetted by the PWD department, senior third-party people having good consultants. And then we had these agencies working for us. They were given a full support with all sorts of freedom on the ground to go as fast as possible. We also had rights, which is a Government of India agency, to determine the quality of what we were doing. So the quality was also ensured. And then, of course, we had the Purvanchal Expressway, where the Honorable Prime Minister landed on the Purvanchal Expressway on its airfield. And he landed in a military aircraft of the Air Force, and we had a good show of the Air Force also on the expressway.
And in the Bundelkhand Expressway, which was super fast, as you're saying, 26 months, and it was, I'm sure many challenges would have come up. Anything that comes to your mind, any example where this was a really sticking point, some challenge?
When you are making an expressway, the biggest challenge also are the bridges that you make. So the challenge was to make the bridges across the Yamuna, across the Kane and other places. So the making of a bridge is a challenge, because when you are working in the water level, then you have to ensure that in the dry season itself, your pillars are above the water level. So we could make the Yamuna bridge in 18 months. But when we were making the Kane bridge, then we found out that we need to modify our design so that we are able to increase the water flow under the bridge, because when we actually went on the ground, the data which was provided to us did not have the full data, and so we had to revise our drawings to increase the water flow for the bridge. So that took us time. So these challenges of the bridges are there. But Bundelkhand, the basic advantage was land acquisition very fast.
Yes.
Earthwork was very simple because it was always available, and grit was available right in Mahila and other places. So we could make it very fast.
So we've talked about physical infrastructure. Ab cultural infrastructure की बात करते हैं. You also served in the tourism department. Again, we look at Uttar Pradesh, very much like expressways. There are a lot of corridors and circuits that are coming up. Of course, Ayodhya is one, Kashi Vishwanath corridor. Then we have Mathura, something happening there. In Mirzapur, we have the Vindhyavasini Devi corridor. There's a Ramayan circuit, there's a Buddha circuit. So firstly, just help me understand thoda ki isme, I understand some of the things are central government projects, because they're also kind of a focus on cultural infrastructure there. तो सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट के इनमें से कौन से हैं, उसमें स्टेट गवर्नमेंट का प्राइमरी रोल क्या रहता है, एंड स्टेट गवर्नमेंट इनिशिएटेड व्हाट आर द प्रोजेक्ट्स दैट आर अंडर वे ऑफ द कल्चरल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर प्लान?
देखिए, एक चीज़ तो फेडरल स्ट्रक्चर में आपको समझना चाहिए कि देयर इज नथिंग लाइक द सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट और स्टेट गवर्नमेंट. इट इज़ बेसिकली डेवलपमेंट ऑफ द स्टेट एज पार्ट ऑफ द कंट्री. सो आई वुड नॉट लाइक टू डिस्टिंग्विश दैट वे.
बजट का ही फर्क है ज़्यादा. और
देखिए, वो संभव ही नहीं है कि स्टेट गवर्नमेंट सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट के बिना सपोर्ट के साथ अच्छा कर सके. और सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट को स्टेट गवर्नमेंट को लगाकर ही जो है प्रोजेक्ट्स लाना पड़ता है, बिकॉज यू सम स्टेट और दी अदर. सो आई डोंट लुक एट इट दैट वे. व्हाट आई लुक एट इट एज अ न्यू प्रोजेक्ट इज वेदर इट हैज़ seen what is required on the ground, whether the project actually meets the aspirations of the people on the ground, whether the project is as per the vision of the chief minister, or in our case, some of the projects has the vision of the honorable prime minister. So basically, the issue is whether the vision has been ensured as part of the project, to whether it meets the aspirations of the people, whether the ground realities have been taken on board, and like for any project, whether land has been made available for the project to take shape, and whether funds have been provided, whether through central or state government. That is not so important. I always feel personally as an officer that, well, there are sufficient funds always available for projects of value. And it is there is no dearth of funds for large projects also. The issue is how to take up the project with the proper design and vision, and then secondly, how to execute the project, and three, ensure that once the project comes in place, how you are going to run it so that the project is serviced properly and the services which are to be given are properly provided for.
And amongst the ones that I mentioned, are there many more projects of this kind? I mentioned a few, isn't it?
Well, the Honorable Chief Minister is, since we worked with him very closely in the tourism department, very clearly of the view that Uttar Pradesh has immense potential for tourism and religious tourism also. And it is all part of the same story. And it was he who initiated the event in Ayodhya just before Diwali, one day before Diwali, Choti Diwali, where he had asked us to hold a function at Diwali to commemorate, celebrate and to showcase the projects in Ayodhya. The Deepotsav event was held for the first time, and we are so happy to tell you that under his command, when we held this event for the first time in Ayodhya and we lit the lamps on the Ram Ki Pedi, every channel in the world showed this event, because never earlier Ayodhya had been showcased as a religious as well as tourist destination. And every year, now that this event has become a world famous event, every year there is something more which is added to it. And last time it was held, the Honorable Prime Minister personally was there for the event, and we made a Guinness Book of World Record with the largest number of lamps lighted at the same time by youth.
Some of these projects are extremely challenging because they're all congested areas, like Kashi Vishwanath, extremely congested, Mathura, even Ayodhya. All these are like ancient cities and a lot of congestion, and there in the middle of that, this needs to be done. So can you just help me understand from just one example, which type के challenges आते हैं when you do these kind of redevelopment, corridor creation in the middle of the cities, and how
So the Kashi Vishwanath project was undertaken by the Religious Affairs Department of the state. The Honorable Prime Minister personally, it is his constituency and it was his vision. He had this entire broad aspect of how to bring Baba Vishwanath right up to the Gangaji. And it was his vision that under his command, Chief Minister Saab had told us all to get together. So we were able to put up the project and it got its final approval. Obviously, land acquisition was a challenge. Bits and pieces of houses were purchased earlier. But when you have to make a large project, more than 300 houses, built houses of decades, which had to be taken over. The challenge was not just the house owners and compensation to house owners, because in urban areas the policy is to give twice the cost of land and the value of the building which stands on the land. But the challenge also was the tenants, who had a very, I would say, temporary sort of or non-legal relationship with their owners. They had, some of them were illegal occupants and things like this. Then some of the properties were under trusts. So these 301 houses which were to be acquired, the state government provided all the money for it. Corrective decision making was there, empowering the district administration to formulate a committee to buy each house and then giving an approval from the state government on each property. This was a challenge. The Honorable Chief Minister himself personally then went to the ground, spoke to the people concerned, took the local Sant and Mahatma into confidence, and it was possible to acquire the land. And I can tell you, in an urban area of Uttar Pradesh, this is the largest land chunk bought in one of the oldest city of the world. And these houses were all very amicably acquired from the house owners, and they were given proper compensation. It was only because this acquisition which was executed so very properly that we were able to get the project land, and the Kashi Vishwanath project came on time, and it was inaugurated by the Honorable Prime Minister.
If you talk about Ayodhya, you were also in your ex officio capacity. So of course the entire Ayodhya temple construction is happening as per the broad guidelines laid out by the Supreme Court in terms of who has to do it, how it has to be done. but you were the representative of the state government on the trust in your ex officio capacity. So what's the role there of the state government in the temple kind of parisar? And other than that, in Ayodhya, I'm assuming, and I'm aware that a lot of things are happening for the redevelopment of the city. So thoda sa us pe if you can share a little bit on that.
Well, the plan for Ayodhya was very big. The trust was formulated by the Government of India, and I was the member on behalf of the state government as being the Home Secretary. The trust had very prominent persons of the country. The trust took the right direction. Trust also ensured that the temple construction started fast. Separate committee was formulated to make the temple. One of the best agencies of the country were put in place, L&T and Tatas, to construct the temple as well as to provide technical support to the temple. Further funds for the temple were through crowdsourcing and through national campaign which was undertaken, and very good response happened because of the way it was undertaken by the trust and all the agencies there. The temple construction started in the right earnest. I've just recently been to Ayodhya, and the first phase of the temple obviously will be completed as per schedule. But together with the temple
of this year,
together with the temple, the development of Ayodhya, the roads of the Ayodhya, the main trunk road for Ayodhya, other side roads for Ayodhya was undertaken by the state government as per the vision of the Honorable Prime Minister. Chief Minister made us get the sanctions for that. Acquisition of land has also been undertaken from the Awas department for making the new Ayodhya also in place. An airport is almost under completion, so an international airport will come up in Ayodhya, and further infrastructure will be provided for tourism. So large number of new hotels and dharamshalas also coming up to provide for religious tourists and all those to come to Ayodhya. Events have also been organized at Ayodhya. Large festivals have been properly undertaken. The police infrastructure has been upgraded. The railway infrastructure has been upgraded.
Railway station, I think, has been also.
Yes. Yeah. So that has been upgraded. So all of it is coming on board. The national highways, NHAI, has provided the bypass and the ring road and the 84 Kosi Parikrama also. The NHAI has given the sanction for these large projects also. So the road infrastructure will also improve. So all-round development with central and state government agencies has been undertaken, and we have seen the numbers on the ground that almost 10 to 15 times more people are now coming to Ayodhya than earlier. I've just
before even the construction,
before even the temple has started, and we assume that now Ayodhya will have a multiple number of times of religious people, religious tourists coming to see the new temple whenever it is undertaken.
So it's not just basically it's culture is one part, there is tourism, there's economy, it's like complete all of that put together in these.
And by the way, I mean, I have been a collector of Faizabad and Ayodhya. Every person in Ayodhya and Faizabad is happy about it because everyone benefits from it. All across all communities, across all strata, across all professions. Everyone benefits from this entire project. And also, not just Ayodhya, districts close to Ayodhya, within the 84 Kosi, like Barabanki, Gonda, Basti, these Sultanpur, all of these districts will benefit because there will be a lot of movement towards Ayodhya, and the districts adjoining Ayodhya will also develop together with Ayodhya coming up.
So while we are still on this topic, एक और चीज़ की बात करना चाहूँगा वो है कुंभ. And let me share my own experience. I was born in Dehradun. I was very, very young. We went to a Kumbh in Haridwar at the time. And I actually got lost. जैसे movies में दिखाते हैं, actually खो गया था कुंभ में. And then one of the officers, kind of police officers, put me on his shoulder. I was crying, तो मुझे बिठा लिया, and was roaming around. And my grandfather noticed me, and somehow I kind of got saved because of that. उसके बाद I went to Kumbh अभी in 2019, the Prayagraj Kumbh. which was a big Bhavya Kumbh, Divya Kumbh. That was a theme. I was really, really impressed with the way it was conducted. The sanitation, the way that was managed, Swachh Bharat was at its kind of peak at the time. The way sanitation was done, the kind of infrastructure that was there, the lost and found mechanism, the security, the way police was managing. There was a command and control room. There were like so many tent cities of all kinds that were created. Massive, I think the area was also spread out. It was really, really impressive of how the largest congregation in the world gets managed and can be managed. What I want to understand from you कि पिछले वाले कुंभ पे एक बार आते हैं, but in general, how does Kumbh gets managed? You've been again, you were tourism in the tourism department at that point in time. You've also seen Kumbh, you said in 1989 but what's the way? It's a temporary almost city or a temporary district that gets created. Just if you could explain how Kumbh management happens a little bit, and then I'll come to specifically the last Kumbh.
Well, you know that these events are organized every 6 years. And Kumbh per se is an area which is notified every time the Kumbh happens as a separate new district. With a new police and a new administrative district. Separate officers are appointed with the legal powers to operate within that district. It is on the bank of the Yamuna and the Ganga. The very first aspect about the Kumbh is to make a plan for the movement of the crowd to the Sangam area of the Prayagraj district. So the first aspect about is to plan for the movement of the crowds. The movement is by road or by rail or by air now. Air has become very popular. So all three mechanisms are there for people to arrive. And obviously this entire movement of people happens over a period of time. There are various auspicious days when the crowd is Shahi Snan and others, where the crowd becomes the highest because it is most auspicious then. So one is the planning for the movement of the crowd. Obviously with the planning for the movement of the crowd comes the planning for the infrastructure, which means the approach road for the railway infrastructures also, the approach road for the air infrastructure, and then for the stay of the pilgrims who come for the Kumbh. And then of course the infrastructure to bring the crowd movement to the point where the actual bathing happens, providing infrastructure on the river in the sense of these various ferries and boats and patrol boats that there are in place. Then the infrastructure of the police which comes in place, the infrastructure for the various sanitary inputs which have to be brought in place, the toilets which are bio-toilets and others which have to be brought in place, then the infrastructure for tourism, for information counters, for the infrastructure for the various exhibitions, the cultural programs which happen, the infrastructure for the various akhadas that happens there. So that is the second part of the campaign for Kumbh. So the planning for this starts almost a year and a half, almost 2 years in advance for whatever Kumbh happens. So we have seen quite a few Kumbhs. I have personally been on the ground, as I told you, on 89. And then in the power sector, when we were there, we were doing our bit on the electrification of the Kumbh areas twice in the various Kumbhs. And then of course in 2019, we were part of the Tourism and Information Department, where we chipped in our inputs for the tourism and the information infrastructure for the Kumbh area. We saw the Kumbh very closely under the guidance of the Honorable Chief Minister. The Kumbh happened extremely well. And you all know that UNESCO has recognized this as the largest crowd which happens in humanity. And this is a self-sustaining crowd. Nobody gives any invitation. People come on their own. So this is what is Kumbh all about. It is a massive exercise. And what is noteworthy is that this time more than 25 crore people came to Kumbh, and not a single incident happened on the ground. And a large number of social activities also happened. Eye relief camps were organized, health camps were organized, large number of social activities of helping the poor also happened on the ground. Old people happened on the ground. So all of it happened. Tourism, we had new aspects. A lot of international tourism also happened. I met a couple from Australia who were staying with us in the government tourist accommodation. They were very happy. One of the person, the husband was a photographer, and he had been on earlier Kumbhs also. And he told me that this time it was a very well organized, very systematic Kumbh. So things have happened very well. Things are good. And again, the Kumbh is now going to be there in 2025. Branding of Kumbh has to happen. The highlighting of Kumbh has to happen. And the infrastructure again, every time becomes more intricate and more sophisticated. So this time again, the work has started. And very able officers have been put in command to ensure that Kumbh happens positively again in the next 20-25 year.
Yeah. It is really fascinating from an administrative perspective also that there's almost a 76th district, that's UPS 75 district, a 76th district get created in the run-up to Kumbh, and it runs like a proper district with subdivisions, SDMs, with SP, all of that. How do you estimate the number of people when these numbers which we hear? How do you even estimating people coming from all sides? There's no...
Well, of course, this time the police used drones to calculate the head count in a very broad fashion from the air. They also used artificial intelligence to see from the checkpoints how the movement of the crowds happen. They have seen the numbers which happened earlier. So it's an estimate. So we can only give an estimate on the ground. Obviously, each head count is not possible. But what I would also like to tell you is that the Defense Ministry also this time in Kumbh provided all the infrastructure, and they opened up the fort where the banyan tree was made available for the public to view. So this again was a major milestone for us, and this Kumbh people could actually pay their respects to some of the oldest things around the Kumbh area.
I'll come to the last topic of your stint in the last 5-6 years, which is around investment in UP. Now, UP has the goal of becoming a $1 trillion economy, and that's topmost on the CM's agenda also. And many things are being done for that. One of them is to get investment into UP from India and from across the world. And there was an investor summit that had happened a few years back. But this time, the one that happened now is really, really supposed to be big. A lot of commitments being made and all. What's the planning behind that? I know that all the ministers, all the senior officials had fanned out across the world, wooing investors in India in different cities. So what's been the strategy and what's been the thinking behind that? And how do you really see these investments then converting into these commitments converting into actual investments? A little bit on that.
Well, you know that the state can only develop if there is growth in all the sectors of the economy. So in the primary sector, there has to be growth. In the secondary sector, which is the industry and associated sector, there has to be growth. And of course, the tertiary sector, the services sector also has to grow. If growth happens in the economy, that obviously brings employment. If growth happens in the economy, it also increases the per capita income of the persons within the state and ensures that people have a better life and living. Right from the beginning, since we have already discussed, the state saw a complete makeover on the law and order machinery of the state, and this aspect of the state that UP has one of the best law and order situation in the country, ensured that we had the groundwork for attracting investment within the state. The Honorable Chief Minister was very clear that we have to work hard upon that, and it is this that provided the springboard for bringing investors on the ground. I remember the first time when the Investor Summit was organized, a lot of hard work was required to get all the investors to come to UP and then take up the MOUs and then converting the MOUs for the groundbreaking ceremonies into actual investment on the ground. But once after these 4-5 years, the current Investor Summit was organized in February 2023. This time I could very clearly see as part of the government that almost everyone, not just in India, but big companies all over the world were part of this exercise of taking up projects in UP. And the largest outcome of MOUs happened for Uttar Pradesh. The Chief Minister planned it very well. He ensured that under the leadership of the senior ministers of the state, almost 10 different delegations went to various 18-19 countries. I was also part of one of the delegations under the finance minister, and at various locations all over the world, industry bodies, local populace, and the local Indian foreign ministry officials were all together brought on a common platform to send the message across the world that UP wants to go very aggressively on bringing investments within our state. Large number of policies were upgraded. Almost more than 25 new policies were brought in place in the various sectors. The basic industrial policy was updated, upgraded, and ensured that the Government of India guidelines and the state government with its extra effort could make UP as a very attractive destination. इस पर बहुत काम किया उन्होंने. तो पहले तो उन्होंने सभी मिनिस्टर्स के लेवल पर अलग अलग कंट्रीज अक्रॉस द वर्ल्ड भेजा, यूरोप भेजा, अमेरिका भेजा, साउथ अमेरिका भेजा. इसके अलावा जो है जापान, कोरिया, सिंगापुर, दुबई, ऑल ऑफ दीज प्लेसेस. एंड फिर दूसरा कंट्री के विदिन भी जो है उन्होंने जो ये रोड शोज हैं उसको ऑर्गेनाइज करने का निर्देश दिया. मुंबई के रोड शो में ऑनरेबल चीफ मिनिस्टर वेंट हिमसेल्फ and he was able to take up one-to-one discussions with the industry captains. So that also was a very successful venture. And then finally, in the Investor Summit, which was a 3-day event, where the inauguration was done by the Honorable Prime Minister, the closing done by the Honorable President, and then various sessions for the various sectors. So sectoral usme jo hai, senior cabinet ministers of Government of India were invited. And of course, industry captains were invited and things moved forward. So ultimately, the Investor Summit has given a very good result. These investment proposals or MOU will now get converted to actual groundbreaking on the ground, and that will happen very soon, within a few months, when actual investment will start after allocation of land to these industries. So a very systematic approach has been undertaken. We have also seen how other states have functioned. We have also understood how best we can move forward. We have taken up the best points from the directions of the Government of India. And I am sure with this collaboration of the central government ministries and the state government and the industry department being the nodal department for the state, we have moved forward under the command of the Chief Minister.
And you mentioned about roadshows within India, and remember when the Chief Minister travelled to Bombay, that was covered widely by the media, the one-on-one meetings with the industry captains. And I remember seeing a photograph and covering of the meeting with Mr. Mukesh Ambani also. I think you also accompanied him on that visit. Just curious, this thing, hota kya in meetings? These meetings are more courtesy, this thing with a photo op, or यहाँ पे actual commitments get discussed in these one-on-one meetings? What level of granularity?
देखिए, जब भी ये one-on-one meetings होती हैं, the first thing that is done is to understand what the industry captain would like to work upon, which areas they would like to work upon. And then obviously a lot of background work is done already. So which are the policies of the state government which look attractive to them? They already have inputs from them, and then they give us a broad idea. The Chief Minister, they assure him to give a broad idea of which areas they'd like to work upon, which projects they would like to undertake, and which policies, under which policies they would give their projects. So then they give a broad outline of what they want to do, and then the Honorable Chief Minister invites them for the Investor Summit, and also he gives the person a commitment that the state government will go full steam ahead for taking up the projects of the proposed investor, and that is the way it moves forward.
Got it.
So it's a very positive sort of interaction which happens, and these interactions become very professional. All that was discussed is taken up by the industry officers, and then they take it forward.
Got it. I mean, you worked so closely with the current Chief Minister in the last 5-6 years, and also earlier you said you first met him when you were in DM Gorakhpur and he was the MP there. That's when you got to work together, and now. So what would you say are some of the unique traits that you have seen in the Chief Minister? In general, it's just you work with so many politicians, so many people, but what are some unique traits? And you can also illustrate them with some example that would be very interesting.
Well, I would only say this, that having worked with our Chief Minister, he has the vision of taking forward things for the state in every area that one can think of. He has a very clear understanding of every department, every project. He personally reviews the projects and the departments, and whether there are regulatory departments or whether they are departments which have schemes and projects for the public at large, say how to run the fair price shop, how to run the schemes for the providing food grains, how best to ensure that the central government schemes have the best outcome in our state. Incidentally, in almost every scheme of the central government, almost, we in UP have done one of the best. We are at the top of the rankings in the central government scheme of things for the implementation of projects. So how best to get advantage of all of it? In the entire COVID campaign, how UP could perform the best and take up the guidelines of Government of India, the Prime Minister's entire drive for immunization, the Prime Minister's drive for how to tackle COVID, how to ensure that these guidelines are implemented in the state. So he has the broad vision to take up these projects on the ground. And the second thing is that he has a very close view on the ground. So he knows exactly what is happening on the ground, and take feedback from the ground. So this view from the top and then the view from the grassroots. This aspect about him is very positive, and since we have worked all very closely with him, we understand that the way he works, we haven't put in so many years in the field, we still continue to learn from him.
And I'm assuming there's this long stint as MP. When you're kind of an MP, from that time on, you're interacting with people. You have seen working of district very, very closely. That also feeds in, because a lot of chief ministers who would come and then they learn from scratch, and of course they have sharp learners and they grow quickly. But in his case, he's been a MP for a long time, and that also would kind of feed into.
Obviously, when you are a public representative and an MP, and he has been an MP for 5 terms from Gorakhpur, so obviously the experience as an MP has helped him to understand the schemes of the central and state government. And he's Gorakhpur and development of areas in and around Gorakhpur have been very close to his heart. And having worked there in 2002, we now see the current Gorakhpur, the modern Gorakhpur. And I can say for sure that it's seen a sea change. The entire city and the entire area is completely changed, whether it is the road infrastructure, whether it is the other infrastructure, whether it is a new fertilizer factory, whether it's the AIMS that has come up in Gorakhpur, then whether it's the police infrastructure, then there is the water body which is called the Ramgarh Tal, which has now been brought up as a tourist destination. So all the areas in and around Gorakhpur for tourism and culture, so all of it has happened very properly and very systematically. New zoo at Gorakhpur. So all of these just show people at large that, well, Gorakhpur has become very modern. It is at the Mohana of that area. We are right at the base of that junction between Nepal and Bihar, where entire Gorakhpur serves in the health sector, in other areas also for those parts of the adjoining country as well as the adjoining state. So this has become very positive, and we can see on the ground that a lot of work has been done, a lot of hard work has been done, and there is a perceptible quantum improvement in things which have happened on the ground.
I had a chance to go to Gorakhpur some time back, and I can say that a lot of these things that you're saying were visible. I have not seen the old Gorakhpur that you're saying 2002. I saw the new one. One more thing I want to don't miss upon is, other than your work in UP, is the work in Government of India that you talked about, disability. I think that's something that doesn't get talked about enough. And again, I can share my personal experience. In our earlier avatar, we used to work with MPs on constituency development. One of the things we always leveraged in that period, the same period when you were in the Government of India, is the EDIT scheme of the disability department, where you provide aids and appliances to the disabled, tricycles, wheelchairs. You have limbs, artificial limbs, all of that. And with every MP, we would do camps where thousands of people with disability would get distributed that in collaboration with the LIMCO, which is a PSU in Kanpur, which creates and builds these aids and appliances. Very, very successful. I remember that doing it in Sirsa, in Kendrapada, in Odisha, in Karnal. 5,000 people in one go were distributed this. That's just one instance of what I know of the work of the disability department. It was a new department at the time when you were there as joint secretary. Tell me a little bit about that. What were the things that you put in place as this new department was created? You talked about the act that was brought in parliament, and what are the main schemes there?
Well, I will come to the first point, first, that is the ADIP scheme. The AIDS and assistive devices scheme of the central government was totally revamped.
It existed.
It had been there for quite some time, but it was totally revamped in three aspects. One, the support that we provided under the ADIP scheme, the quantum of support in terms of money, that was multiplied. Second, the number of aids and assistive devices were all modernized. So you had motorized tricycles, you had these sticks for blind persons which had infrared sensors to ensure that you can provide input to a blind person of whether he is going the right direction. Then we also had the cochlear implants also being part of this entire scheme of things, where cochlear implants provided to young children could give them the option of starting to learn very fast and almost be like a normal person. So the ADIP scheme in terms of quantum, in terms of modernity, ADIP scheme in terms of spread was taken up. Under the ADIP scheme, I can tell you on 17 September 2016, in Navsari at Gujarat, we distributed 11,000 plus aids and assistive devices to persons with disability.
I remember that event.
And in Gujarat, on the Honorable Prime Minister's birthday, this entire project was undertaken, where we also lit lamps with persons with disabilities, and it was a world record. So this also showcased how well the scheme could be established. Every MP in the entire country was keen to ensure that an ADIP camp was organized in his or her constituency. So the ADIP scheme was completely revamped, upgraded, and technology items were provided. Motorized tricycles are such that if you give it to a person with disability, he can become a newspaper vendor, he can become a milk vendor, he can use the motorized tricycle to go to college or school or become a teacher, so that he or she is not dependent on any support. So all these things were part of the aids and assistive devices scheme. Second, the new act was brought in place. The Government of India could clear the act in both the houses of parliament. The new act recognized 21 disabilities, which earlier were only 7 or 8. So large number of new disabilities was added to the list.
Example, what would be a new?
The areas of disabilities in the mental impairment areas, they were brought in place, and then the percentage of employment which was provided under reservation for persons with disabilities went up from 3% to 4%. So all of this was brought in place. Then the Accessible India campaign was launched, because you need to have buildings with Sugam Bharat. So that was also part of this campaign. New projects were undertaken, new institutions were brought in place. The Indian Sign Language Center was established in Delhi for persons with hearing disabilities. So how do you develop sign languages, not just in English, but in vernacular languages? So that was also brought in place. So a lot of work was done. The Honorable Prime Minister is very pro-disability and persons with disability. The word Divyang was coined under his guidance. So a lot of work got done, and this entire department, which was totally new, a lot of mileage was provided by the success of the schemes and programs at the new institutions. And persons with disabilities do recognize the work which has been done in the past, and we continue to grow in this sector. And we now have what is called we had started this unique identity for persons with disability. So this identity also provides a platform on which benefits can accrue to persons with disabilities.
This is really good work on that front. थोड़ा सा zoom out करेंगे. We've talked about different pieces of work, but you had a long career as an administrator, 38 years. What would be your suggestion? What are the traits that you believe you have consciously tried to cultivate over these years, which have really held you in good stead? Right? What are the do's and don'ts in some sense of being an effective administrator?
Well, I can only say this for myself, that for any young officer, since I have done my bit and now I'm retired, so for any young officer, there are three things. One, I would like to suggest as an officer, not just in the IAS, but anywhere where you are working as an engineer or a doctor or even in any specific area. One, you will need to do a lot of hard work, because governance happens only through hard work. And obviously, you have to be committed to your job to do that. Governance doesn't come easy, because problems are many and you have to, one, do a lot of hard work. Secondly, a lot of understanding needs to happen, which means that you have to know on the ground what is there on the ground.
Yes.
If you are a collector, you should know what is happening in every village of your district. You should know how people are reacting to these schemes. So, जमीन की जो जानकारी है वो होना चाहिए, and then file की जानकारी भी होनी चाहिए. If you are good on your file, because everything happens on file, either at the district or state level. So the file knowledge as well as the ground knowledge, मैं यही कहता हूँ. There are some officers who are good on file, but they have no knowledge of what is happening on the ground. There are some officers who have knowledge of what is happening on the ground, but not good on files. So how to be good both on file as well as on the ground? It is then you have success with you, and ultimately you are able to serve people. So this is what I keep saying, that as a senior officer and now a retired officer, younger officers should develop this knack of understanding, reading whatever is there on file, so that a proper decision and a positive decision can be undertaken, and then knowing that this decision will help people on the ground with the feedback they have.
So hard work, understanding of the ground, understanding of the file. Did you always want to become a IAS officer? When did it start? This was like your school days, say?
Well, my mother was very keen that I should be in the services.
Okay.
And when I was in class 1, which means I might have been 5 or 6, my class teacher would say that, well, this young boy has this leadership quality. And it was then that this idea came to mind. I was in any family, my father was working in the steel plant. I was in a school in one of the steel plants. And it is then that my mother was very keen that I should become an officer of the service. This continued, and then when I had to join college, I had various options, but I then thought of
IIT Kanpur.
Then I got admission to IIT Kanpur. And of course, I had an admission to BITS Pilani. I had an admission to the St. Stephen's in physics. I had admission to various other branches. I also had the option to go into the medical side in BHU. And so my father ensured that I could sit for every exam, and we cleared almost all of it. It was then that we could see that from IIT Kanpur and IIT, large number of young aspirants were getting into the civil services. So then I took this call that I should join the IIT in electrical engineering. We did well in the first 1.5 years. I chose electrical engineering. First I joined as mechanical engineer. Then I chose electrical engineering because electrical engineering was the in thing for civil services. And in the second year itself decided that I'll sit for the civil services. And then I came to IIT Delhi to prepare for the exams. And then, of course, God was kind and all of it happened very positive.
You had rank?
I had rank 4. And in the engineering service, I had a rank of 1.
So ये बचपन से ही था, मतलब बचपन से ही वो चल रहा था, पूरा कॉलेज की प्लानिंग वाज अराउंड आल्सो.
ऐसा कोई डेलिबरेट प्लानिंग नहीं था, बट एट द बैक ऑफ द माइंड ये था कि कंपटीशन में बैठना है. And my mother and especially and my father did the hard work of ensuring that I would be appearing in almost every exam that was possible. So he would always say, "Tum apna padhai karo and I'll fill the forms for you."
Okay. Things have changed since then, right? जब आपके time the best talent in the country, the primary option they would look at is civil services, right? In the 80s, in the 70s, and before that. After liberalization, especially in the last couple of decades, a lot of options are now available for the youth, especially those who are kind of doing well. They can get into the corporate world, they can go abroad, they can kind of they can do their own startup, work in startups. Of course, civil services remain an option. So एक तरह से spectrum बढ़ गया है. And a lot of these things are also lucrative. They are kind of challenging, they are stimulating. So what would be your message to the youth, which is almost, you can say, the bright talent out there sitting on the fence, कहीं ना कहीं मन में है, they want to contribute to nation building, कुछ अपने देश के लिए करना है, लेकिन not yet taken the full plunge. And plunge is not necessarily कि everyone becomes an IAS officer. They can work from outside of the system also, but they've not yet committed their full professional life to impact. What would be your message to them?
I have two children, in the sense that I have a son who has done law from the National University. I have a daughter who has been to a premier institution of the world, Harvard, and she has done her master's from there. And I have very closely been part of their journey of professionally trying to do as best as it was possible. And of course, I have known any number of young people who have done well. I have also known of young people who have not done as well. So the first challenge which I feel, I mean, I'm being very specific, is when a student comes to class 10. It is then that, or 9th or 10th maybe, now it is becoming more and more difficult, so one should take it up earlier, maybe 9th also. In class 9, the student, boy or girl, has to take the call of what is going to be his or her direction in life. And this criticality becomes more important when you come to class 10th. If you have done well in your 10th board, then you have the options to go to the better schools in the 11th and 12th. And if you have good output in your 12th board exam and you have prepared well for your entrance exams, whether in the engineering side, whether in the art side, whether in the commerce side, whether in any direction that you feel, my feeling is that if you believe in what decision you have taken and you have done well, it is only then will you do well. It cannot be in half minds. Most youth suffer because they are in half minds, they are not sure of themselves. Sometimes there is a lot of parental pressure or peer pressure to do certain thing, while that is not actually what they want. I would say that, well, this is the challenge for most youth, and specifically for girls. I don't see any young girl now sitting idle at home and not planning to just do nothing. Every young girl in India today is moving towards become a professional person. Most girls are doing better than boys in terms of academic outcomes. So one has to be very clear in what one needs to do. Boys have to be very clear. They have to fix up their view in life. Girls are already very hardworking and they work harder, but they are also taking a lot of options. Competition is increasing because everyone is on the ground to do their best. So obviously this focus on which direction to move upon and then putting all the hard work to take it forward. Nobody can make you work hard. You have to work hard from yourself. It has to be within you. And I can assure you, if you know what your capacity is and if you work hard, you will do your best in whichever fashion you move. If you do your best and you have the satisfaction of having done as per your own capacity, you will get the best for yourself.
And how would you motivate them to work for the country, work for impact?
If any youth works for himself and does well, every citizen of the young citizen of the country does well, he is automatically working for the country, because anyone who does well as a journalist, as a social worker, as a painter, as a musician, as an engineer, as a doctor, as a civil servant, as even a clerical position in any government job or a private sector, as a management graduate, if anyone is doing well in whichever sector they are working, They are being part of the country's growth. They are the growth story for the country. It's the youth. Wherever they are, if they do well, they are always...
I mean, good citizens, basically.
Yes. But I would also say that one should have a positive aspect to life. There are certain... you might face challenges. You might have failures, but one should not think too much about failures. You should learn from your failures and move forward. There is so much available on the internet that you have so many options before you that you should spend time, close the door, think for yourself, choose the options and then move forward.
One last aspect I want to talk about, which is your home. Your wife is herself an icon. She's Padma Shri. She's a folk artist. She's a folk singer, folk dancer, Malini Awasthi ji. And she's a this thing in herself, right? और ये घर में ये डायनेमिक्स कैसे चलते हैं? एक तरफ है, मतलब मैं आई यूज्ड टू रीड अ लॉट फ्रॉम अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी, फॉर्मर प्राइम मिनिस्टर. तो एक बार उनसे किसी ने पूछा कि एक जब से आप पॉलिटिक्स में आगे आगे बढ़े हैं तो आपकी कविता कम होती गई है. तो उनका जवाब था, अपने स्टाइल में वो बोलते थे कि कविता के रेगिस्तान में राजनीति के रेगिस्तान में कविता के कलम की शाही सूख गई है. तो ये आपके घर में ये प्रशासन शासन का खिंचातानी का रेगिस्तान ज़्यादा भारी है या फिर जो है वो लोक संगीत, लोक गीत, उसके कलम की शाही ज़्यादा भारी है? कैसे हाउ द थिंग्स एट होम गिवन वेरी डिफरेंट?
देखिए, as far as Malini is concerned, and I keep saying this very often, हम लोग दो पटरी हैं, ठीक है? दोनों पटरी जो है वो साथ साथ चलती जरूर है, मिलती कभी नहीं है. सो वो अपने काम में व्यस्त रहती हैं और वो उनको फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी है, जो भी वो काम करना चाहेंगी. अब वो विदेश आज जैसे गई हैं, विदेश में काम कर रही हैं, देश में काम कर रही हैं, गांव में जाके काम करती हैं, फोक के एरिया में काम कर रही हैं, जो एक डिफ़िकल्ट एरिया है, एक जनरल एरिया नहीं है जिसमें लोग काम करते हैं. लेकिन उन्होंने बिलीफ ही रखा कि हम फोक में काम करेंगे. पढ़ा उसके बारे में, उनकी ट्रेनिंग भी इस बारे में है, संस्कृत में पढ़ी हुई है, म्यूज़िक में पढ़ी हुई है. तो ऑब्वियसली अच्छे गुरुओं का साथ मिला है. जगह जगह हम लोग के साथ रहने में गुरुओं का जो है आई वुड से उनका 1-to-1 भी हुआ है. तो उसका कारण यही है कि एक तो मेहनत की समझ थी और फिर उसको परफॉर्म करना भी आसान नहीं होता है, बट परफॉर्म करके सही चीज़ को सामने लाना ये उन्होंने खुद किया है. एंड उसमें हम लोग केवल अपनी तरफ से, मैं एज अ हस्बैंड, हमारे बच्चे भी जो हैं उनकी तारीफ़ करते हैं जब अच्छा होता है, और कभी कभी जब उनको कोई सुझाव देना तो हम सुझाव भी ज़रूर देते हैं. उसी तरह जो है हमारा प्रोफेशनल लाइफ अलग चलता है. मालिनी भी हमको सुझाव देती रहती हैं कि भाई इस तरह की चीज़ करना चाहिए, ये चीज़ आपको देखना चाहिए, ये चीज़ पब्लिक में लानी चाहिए, कल्चरल सेक्टर में क्या एग्जैक्टली करना चाहिए. बट हम दोनों लोग एक दो पटरी की तरह हैं, साथ साथ चलते हैं, लेकिन मिलते मिलते कम है.
आपको भी एक दूसरे के उसमें इंटरेस्ट है? फॉर एग्जाम्पल आपको जो है लोकगीत में, इन सब में इंटरेस्ट है?
जी बिल्कुल, लोक संगीत में बहुत इंटरेस्ट है. यूपी के जगह जगह काम करने का मौका मिला है, और चूँकि कल्चर डिपार्टमेंट में रहा हूँ, टूरिज़्म डिपार्टमेंट में रहा हूँ, 2 बार रहा हूँ, तो आर्टिस्ट से मिलने का भी मौका मिला. एक एग्जांपल दूंगा कि जब हम लोग ने पहली बार दीपोत्सव अयोध्या में कराया, तो हम लोग ने रामलीला की जो टोलियाँ हैं वो विदेशों से भी इनवाइट, इंडोनेशिया से, रशिया से, श्रीलंका से और भी जगहों से हम लोगों ने सबको बुलाया. तो उन आर्टिस्ट को जब हम लोग ने बुलाकर परफॉर्म कराया, उनको जो है आगे वहाँ पर दिखाया, तो बहुत खुशी होती है जब हम आर्टिस्ट को सामने लाते हैं. तो कल्चर और कल्चरल डिपार्टमेंट से हम लोग चूँकि उसी में रहे हैं, तो काफ़ी क्लोजली देखने का मौका मिला है. अच्छा पॉजिटिव रिस्पांस मिला है. आर्टिस्ट के साथ समय बिताकर आदमी जो है खुश होता है, और आर्टिस्ट को सपोर्ट पूरा करना चाहिए, बिकॉज दे आर द जेम्स ऑफ दोस ऑफ द कंट्री एंड द स्टेट. They need to be taken positively.
And last question, what do you do to unwind?
What do I do to unwind? Where to unwind now, of course, I have been advised to be very sharp on my body. So to unwind, I do a lot of walking. And to unwind, we have a large number of pets. I'm very fond of dogs. and any number of dogs with us. I am very fond of, my wife is very fond of cats. So we have any number of, in our house we have a large number of pets. And to unwind also, after when we were very busy in our office work, after 11:30, I take about 1 hour to watch things on Discovery, things on BBC Earth, and things of watching animals all across the world, watching things on TV. So that is the way I would like to unwind. And of course, one other aspect about unwinding is to meet your old friends and spend time with them. So we unwind ourselves with a large number of pets. And now I have 2 grandchildren. The best mechanism to unwind is to spend time with our grandchildren. I have a grandchild, Nati, grandson, Ram, and a Puti, granddaughter, Ahilya. So I spend time with them. And that is pure heaven when you are spending time with your grandchildren.
Great. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you and hosting you on Sushasan and hearing about all the work that has happened over the last 5-6 years in UP, earlier in the disability department. Also listening to your own kind of views on youth and on officers and on life.
Thank you, Gaurav, and thank you, Samagra, for giving me this opportunity. We have discussed a lot of things, and once again, I'd like to say that whoever watches this, the intent is for the youth to understand that we as citizens of the country have to take India to the top. And that is only possible if young youth of our country do well. किसी भी एरिया में अगर आप काम कर रहे हैं, अगर आप अपने में बिलीव करते हैं, राइट डिसीजंस लेते हैं, खूब मेहनत करते हैं और दिमाग भी अपना इस्तेमाल करते हैं, तो आप एक अच्छे सिटीजन होंगे, एक अच्छा परिवार बनाएंगे और अपने अच्छे परिवार को आगे ले जाएंगे, तो इंडिया आगे बढ़ेगा। जो एक वर्ल्ड एज अ फैमिली की बात कही गई है G20 में, यही नारा प्रधानमंत्री जी ने दिया है। ये वर्ल्ड एज अ फैमिली के लिए नारा न रहे, एक्चुअली ग्राउंड पर उतरे और इंडिया में लीड हम कर सके। देश काफ़ी आगे प्रोग्रेस किया है पिछले कई सालों में, देश और आगे प्रोग्रेस करेगा। वी ऑफ कोर्स नाउ आर द लार्जेस्ट कंट्री इन द वर्ल्ड इन टर्म्स ऑफ पॉपुलेशन। वी विल डू वेल। अभी हम लोग देख रहे हैं अपने आँख के सामने कितना इम्प्रूवमेंट इंडिया के पर्सपेक्टिव को हुआ है, इंडिया के स्टैंडिंग को हुआ है। And Indians all over the world, I have 2 younger brothers in the US. We see every critical position is being handled by Indians across the world. So I am pretty sure India will do very well. And I am happy that the youth of the country are doing well, but they need to push.
Yeah. If UP will do well, India will do well. India will do well.
UP is the 5th largest country in the world, as our Chief Minister says. And if UP does well, obviously India will do well. And जैसा कहते हैं, डबल इंजन की सरकार एंड मजबूती से काम हो रहा है, प्रदेश में भी, देश में भी, और सब आगे बढ़े।
थैंक यू सो मच।
थैंक यू, नमस्कार।